Viewer discretion is advised.
For the first time ever in my life, I had thoughts of violence. I wanted to hurt this person. I wanted him dead. Like, I was ready to take my car and run him over myself and make sure that he was nowhere near me, nowhere around hurting anyone else. And it's crazy because it's like I was still engaging in interacting with this person, so I didn't remove myself from the situation. I didn't tell them to leave me alone, but I felt this dark feeling inside of me that I wanted them gone. But that's just how much that darkness was over me, that it's like you can't let go of it, but then you also don't want to do it yourself. It was like if I removed it, then I wouldn't have to worry about it anymore. And I tell you, when I look back at it, I had never in my life felt these desires for anyone.
What's up, everybody? So I want to present to you today this Lemy. She's going to be sharing her testimony, and I hope that you guys get inspired and encouraged by her testimony and the things that she'll be talking about. And one thing that I want to point out is that she's the reason why I'm making these videos. She was the one that actually motivated me into doing this. So just give it up to her for that.
There was a time in my life when I didn't consult God for any decisions that I was going to make, any choices, any big plans. I just did them. At that point in my life, I felt that I had the authority to control what was happening around me. And that pretty much got me into a lot of bad situations. Growing up, a little bit of my background, I am an only child from my mom and my dad. I do have siblings from my dad's side. But growing up, I pretty much grew up as an only child syndrome. I was spoiled. I got everything that I wanted. So I expected as I grew up that that's how life was going to be. I was always going to get what I wanted without having to work for it. My mom and my dad split up when I was 5 years old. And from that moment forward, I did have contact with my dad here and there, but I never had that close relationship with him. I grew up without my dad. Like, I would see him in the summer times, I would go and visit him, but it was never like I was raised with him, where I can just go to my dad and talk to him through high school, middle school, anytime I was dealing with a situation. So I always yearned for that connection, to have that manly father figure in my life. And because of that, it did lead me to search for love and validation from men. As I started getting older, and when I became a teenager, I started exploring the world. I kept looking for ways to fulfill that desire of being loved, of being acknowledged. A little background of my relationship with God. So I was raised in the Catholic Church. I did my baptism there. I did my first communion. And then as I started getting older, my dad now, he is a pastor in a Pentecostal church. And those summers when I would come and visit with him, I would go to his church. And I was exposed to a different side of God, through the Christian perspective. And their community there was very welcoming. And I had not experienced that same way of worshiping God as I did in the Catholic Church, because in the Catholic Church, it's a lot of the same prayers, the same process every single service in the Mass, versus, in a Pentecostal church, you have guests, you have loud music, every single service is completely different. And then the community, it's more connected. So I did get that experience, and I love that because I got an opportunity to bond with these people. And as I started getting older, I started reading more of the Bible and noticing things that I was taught growing up that didn't align with my beliefs. I wasn't becoming a Pentecostal, but I started reading more of the Bible. I was trying to find the truths in the Bible and not based on what was being taught to me. So navigating through my faith was a step that I was taking. However, that did not stop me from living in the world. I will be honest. Most of my life, up until a certain point, I was heavy into the world. I was in drugs and a lot of sexual activity, sexually active at a very young age because of that desire to want to find validation in the world. As I was navigating through becoming a teenager, a young adult, and into adulthood, I was exposed to the dark side of the world. Things that I encountered that my family don't even know about it. Things that if I share those things, I always wondered if they would still love me, because I myself would not want any one of my family members to go through that. And during those times, it's crazy because I look back and I think about it, because when I lived in New York for some time, I always remembered, even though I was in the Catholic Church and even though I made a lot of bad choices and, I would go to church on Sundays, but, I wouldn't read my Bible. I'm not even going to lie. I wouldn't read my Bible on a regular basis. I would pray to God when there was a situation going on, like, oh, God, please help me get through this. If I needed a job or something, God, please let me get this job. Or if I wanted something and I didn't want to lose out of it. Like, for example, I'm like, oh, God, let me get this situation, and then I promise I won't do this other thing. And it was a lie, because once it did happen, once God did allow these things that I wanted to happen, I would still go and do the opposite of what I promised him that I was going to do. And so that became my relationship with God. I've always been a person that talks to themselves. Like, I thought that's always been natural. If I'm walking down the street, if I'm in the room, I always just talk to myself. I talk out loud. I'm very candid like that. And it had no direction. It was just me speaking out loud. And yeah, it was just me speaking out loud with no one listening at that time. It was just me being me. Sometimes people would make fun of me because just me laughing by myself. It does sound a bit crazy at times, but I never felt like I was alone. I never felt like, even though I was trying to validate my feelings through other men and like trying to feel that love that I didn't have from my dad, in those moments where I was alone, like in a room, I never felt alone in that sense. And that's what I was mentioning. When I lived in New York, I would walk around, I would go out late at night, 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, on the subway by myself, walking the streets of New York by myself as a young woman, and I was never afraid. And that's the same thing with when I would talk to myself. I was never alone. Like, at that point, yes, my relationship with God wasn't what it is now, but I always felt this sense of protection. Like, I was always going to be fine in that sense. And that's what would allow me to walk around. Maybe at that point, I felt, because of my age, maybe it was that, I'm young, nothing would hurt me. But then, now that I look back, that was always God protecting me. And those times where I would always talk to myself, I look back, and now when I talk to myself, it's not to myself. It's always been to God. And he has always been there listening to every single prayer, every single joke, every single mistake, every single thing that I did. And what people would always say was bad, it was crazy. It wasn't. It was always God by my side. So continuing on the story of me living in New York and being out in the streets, I was living in the world. At that point in my life, I was not actively in church or reading the Bible. I then became a mother at the age of 19. It was the best gift that God had ever given me. And I'm so grateful. I love being a mother. And It's such, until you become a mother, you don't start to appreciate and realize how much our parents do for us and how much you're just willing to sacrifice your love for that beautiful child that you created. So you would think at that moment that becoming a mother, having the best gift that I could ever have, would have made me change my life. You would think that that's what it would have taken, but it wasn't. Even though I had this precious gift from God, I was still heavy into the world. Unfortunately, her father and I, we had a child. We were never married. So we didn't have that covering of God's approval when my daughter was born. So there was a lot of negativity surrounding our relationship, a lot of toxic back and forth. And unfortunately, my daughter was exposed to a lot of that between me and him. And she had to witness a lot of fights between him and I. And that built a lot of resentment in my heart towards him, and I'm sure him towards me. And the most precious gift that God gave me was already being tainted by the darkness that we both had because we weren't healed and we were having a child outside of marriage. So as I continued to raise my daughter, I was still living in the world. I was still in the drugs, drinking, primarily partying. But I dedicated my life to my daughter. It was just one thing about me when it came to my daughter is I made sure that I gave my daughter everything that I can give her. Like I sacrificed everything possible to make sure that I was there for my daughter. And it's not about monetary things, but those moments of being there, because that's what they're going to remember. They're not going to really remember the monetary things. It's about who's there for them. So everywhere I went, my daughter came with me. I was there for everything for her, and I wanted to show her that it's those people who show up for you that really, really matter. And I did sacrifice a lot of things from my personal life. Like I was going to school for architecture, but I made the decision at that point because I became a mom at 19 that was not the career that I was going to be best suited for my life if I was going to be a full-time mother. Because that career is very demanding, and I wanted to make sure that I gave my daughter the best quality of life. Because I was an only child, and I finally had someone with me, my daughter, my little best friend, my little mini-me. So I made that decision, and I stopped going to school. And then, life just continued on. I convinced myself that because I did all of that for her, on the weekend, it's okay to still engage and dabble in the world. Not reflecting on the fact that, my daughter, even though she's little, she'll see these things. It's not being that example for her, showing her that it's okay to dabble into worldly things. And as time went on, we had a lot of strife between her father and I. I had multiple men that were in and out of my life. As I had mentioned, after becoming a mother and, having so much strife between her father and I, it was difficult for me because I wanted to be able to have a beautiful family and raise my daughter like I didn't grow up. And instead, what I focused on was that sacrifice to make sure that I gave her everything that I can give her. But as I still continued to move through life, I wasn't fully healed. A young mother not fully healed, trying to be there for her child and still looking for validation from men. That's what my life was. And I tried my best to just separate myself from that, in the sense, separate being a mother and being a woman. But it was hard. It was very hard because when you're a single parent, everything revolves around you. I didn't have the luxury of taken a day off from my daughter, but I did find the time to go out and party. So in those times, I did get exposed to other bad things in the world, even sexual assault. And that's something that my family doesn't know about either. And it's fine at this point. It's okay that they don't know. Well, now I'm sharing this with everyone, but it's something that I've had to work very hard to get over. And it isn't even about getting over, it's about getting through it, because God doesn't say that he's going to take away the storm. He's going to walk through that storm with you. And I was able to get through that. And here I am today. But to keep going on, I had to show face for my daughter every single day and in front of my family. And then, I started drinking so much. I was a social drinker. I was always having fun, I was always partying. If someone was having a get together, I was there. I was making drinks for everyone. Like that was, I thought that liveliness that I had was a good thing. It was a good thing. So what we're really here for is for you to hear how I came to really strengthen my relationship with God and what really brought me to give my life up to Christ. So as I continued that back and forth with feeling empty and wanting to give to my daughter and just being the best version of myself, I kept drinking more and more. My alcohol tolerance became so high. Yeah, my alcohol tolerance became so high that I would drink shots. Let's say I would drink like 6 shots while everyone is on their second shot, and I would not feel anything. So at that point, I was just over drinking just to feel something and then feel bad the next day. So it just became this very never-ending cycle of nothing beneficial. I was wasting money. I felt horrible the next day. Nothing beneficial came out of it for me. In those times, I would go back and forth with my daughter's father. He would enter my life, leave my life. There were other people from my past that would enter and leave my life during those times. This one particular time is one of the main reasons why I gave my life to Christ. So I had become numb to alcohol at that point. I went on a trip with my cousins and a couple of their friends to Mexico. And in Mexico, as soon as I got on the plane, I was drinking. As soon as I got to the resort, I was already drinking. And by like 10 a.m., I was already drunk, waiting for everyone to arrive. I was so drunk to the point that I was lost. Everyone tells me that I was missing for 4 hours. They didn't know where I was. They didn't know where I had gone to. They were looking at the camera. Security was looking for me. Like, I'm in Mexico, gone. And I'll be honest with you, I have no recollection of any of this. I don't know where I was. I don't know where I went. I don't know what happened during that time. They couldn't find me. Eventually, when they did find me, I was in the bathroom, like on the floor, like just laying there. And of course, right after they found me, everyone was freaking out. Like, they were all worried, but I was still drunk. Like, after they found me, what did I do? I proceeded to continue drinking because I was in Mexico. It was just a funny situation, I didn't really think much of it. So I continued on. I drank more and more and more, and I continued my trip. I came back a couple days later, extremely hungover. And then when I got home and I sobered up, I started to think, man, what could have happened in those 4 hours? What if they never found me? What if I was harmed? What if I was raped? What if I was killed? Like, anything could have happened in that time. I'm in a foreign country. with my family, and something could have happened and they would have had to make a phone call to my family to let them know that I'm not coming back with them. And that hit me. Like, I am endangering my life as well as my daughter. I started to think, like, what would my daughter be like knowing that her mom's not coming back from a trip that she just said bye to? You know what I'm saying? Like, that thought started hitting me. Like, why didn't I think about that? Why am I allowing this hunger to want to hang out and like feel tipsy and feel these things when drinking, when it's harming my health and it's harming those that love me? So I decided that, I hadn't decided at that point. I started thinking about it, like, okay, something isn't right. This isn't really the thing that I should be doing. However, at that point, I didn't stop yet. Someone from my past re-entered my life. I allowed them back into my life. And remember, I had just come back from Mexico. I was feeling lost. A lot of things I was questioning a lot of things in my life. I wasn't feeling right. Like in your spirit, you just feel like something isn't right with your life. You just don't feel comfortable. So this person came back into my life. I let them back in. It was a moment of vulnerability, and I knew in that moment that was not what I should have been doing. I already knew for a fact that God did not approve of me and this person being involved, but I proceeded because I was in this like weird stage of my life that it was just like, okay, this person came back again, so maybe it's for a reason. I kept telling myself, okay, this person keeps resurfacing, it's for a reason. After this person came back into my life, weird things started happening with me overall, my environment. I've always been a lover of nature. Like, I love plants. I love the outdoors. I had plants in my house. It's not like I have like a greenhouse or like the biggest green thumb, but I love that because, plants bring abundance and growth. And when this person was around, my plants weren't growing. On the contrary, they started dying on me. And I had never had that happen to me. Like, all my plants would always thrive. Yeah, there would be times where they wouldn't grow as quickly, but during this time of this darkness like surrounded me, and I started feeling on a regular basis like just very irritable, uncomfortable, and just not like myself. I'm not like the most outgoing, like outspoken. Well, I am outspoken, but I'm not like the center of attention, but I've always been like pretty, I've always been pretty like chill and happy, and where I would talk and lively. That's the word. I was always very lively. And during this time, I felt like my light was so dim when this person came into my life. Like I already knew I shouldn't have been engaging in these interactions. So like something in my mind, like, remember, I always felt God was always with me. God was always with me, but I was never inviting him into me personally. I never was inviting him into my space. I just knew that he was always there. But in these situations, I did not feel like I did not feel like I was doing the right thing. I knew that I was going against his wishes, but still, I was being defiant and doing whatever I wanted. And so I started feeling irritable. I was angry. I was drinking. I was even drinking by myself. Like, I got into this dark depression. And like I mentioned, I was always a social drinker. I've never drank by myself. And then during this stage, I just started drinking every single night by myself. Very depressing. Like, No fun. It was just for me to be able to get numb and go to sleep, because I knew that I was trying to run away from the reality that I knew that I was doing something wrong and I wasn't ready to face the consequences of that. So the reason why I know that I wasn't myself is because I'm not a fighter. I'm not a physical person. Like, I've never had a fight. I've never hit anyone. Like, that's not me. I can verbally say something to someone and hurt their feelings, but I was never a person to hurt anyone. And I got to that point where when this person was around in my life, I became this angry, violent person. Never in my life, no matter how many times people have hurt me, I've been bullied, people made fun of my weight. In the second grade, from my first recollection of being bullied, someone made fun of me. And I still remember that to that day. And so many other things with the assault and like people hurting me. Never did I ever want anything bad to happen to these people. Never did I want to hurt them myself. Never did I want God to ever punish them. On the contrary, I would always pray and wonder, why weren't they doing better things for my life, or not even my life, for their life? You know, may God be able to grant them that love and that forgiveness within themselves so they can treat people better. But in that time, for the first time ever in my life, I had thoughts of violence. I wanted to hurt this person. I wanted him dead. Like, I was ready to take my car and run him over myself and make sure that he was nowhere near me, nowhere around hurting anyone else. And it's crazy because it's like I was still engaging in interacting with this person. So I didn't remove myself from the situation. I didn't tell them to leave me alone, but I felt this dark feeling inside of me that I wanted them gone. But that's just how much that darkness was over me. That's like, you can't let go of it, but then you also don't want to do it yourself. It was like if I removed it, then I wouldn't have to worry about it anymore. And I tell you, when I look back at it, I had never in my life felt these desires for anyone. And I prayed and I asked God for forgiveness, because I don't ever want to feel that feeling ever again. The fact that He created everyone on this earth and I could want to hurt them and eliminate them really didn't sit well in my spirit. I continued to just be irritable. I even got to the point where I broke my phone. I threw it at a steering wheel. Like I mentioned, I'm not an angry person like this. I've never acted in this way. This was completely out of character. And I broke my phone, and I just got to a point where I just couldn't take it anymore. Like this depression that I had, all that darkness that I was feeling, it just kept piling on top of me. The drinking continued by myself every night. Mind you, I'm still with my daughter. My daughter is still around me. And then one night my daughter told me that she loved me and that she was proud of me. And in that moment was when I knew that was God talking through her, because I felt this pull, like I needed to shake out of whatever it was that I was going through during that time. So I started searching like ways to stop drinking. Because I didn't go to an AA or anything like that, but I knew that I wanted to stop drinking. So I decided I was going to. And then at the local church down the street from me, which is actually the church that I still go to, I saw that they have this group. It was called a recovery group, where it was for people struggling with addictions. And I went. Obviously, when I first went in, like I mentioned, I was struggling with my relationship with God. Like I wasn't reading my Bible. I wasn't going to church. I wasn't doing anything of that. Like I would pray, pray for protection if I'm driving somewhere before going to bed. But it was never an intimate relationship that I had with him. But then I walked into the church. Of course, in my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be welcomed here. I have all this darkness on top of me. And it was the opposite. I felt very welcomed, They were not judgmental at all. At first, when I went into the group, I just observed. I didn't share, and they were fine with that. That's what I was worried about, that being enrolled in the program required me to participate, and that's just not. I just needed a place around people that were followers of God, and in a church I felt like, okay, then I can be safe from all of this darkness that I was battling. And then one day I had the courage to share what I was experiencing, and everyone gave me a hug, and it made me feel like, wow, there's hope. I can get through this. And from that moment forward, I continued doing, because there's a book. It's not AA, so there's not steps or anything like that. But I completely stopped drinking. And that first year was the hardest year of my life. The withdrawals were hard. And it was harder as well because, and that's what I've learned with my journey with God, is that you may think that everyone is excited for everything that you're doing with your walk with God, any gifts that you have from Him. You may want and desire for everyone to be supportive, but that's not always the case. And during that first year, in that transitional stage of me stopping drinking, I did have some people who weren't supportive, in the sense where I would explain to them, hey, you know what, I'm not drinking anymore. But they would say, oh, just have one. It's not a big deal. But it was a big deal. What it took for me to get to this point, it was a personal decision. And I wasn't expecting them to understand. It's fine if they didn't understand, but it's that simple piece of caring. But I started learning that you can't control what other people do or support. So I also had to work through that. So not only was I eliminating alcohol, the main thing that brought me connection with people, I had to start eliminating friends from my life. I had to start changing my activities because I was no longer participating in those things. And I got through it, and I completed the first year. And then every year after that, it just became easier. And up until this day, I have 7-8 years sober now. So I am so proud of that. I wouldn't have been able to have done that without God. Without that time, without my daughter telling me those things of how much she loved me and how proud she was, without God using her, the most precious gift that I have, I feel like I would have either done something or something would have happened to me. But all I have to remember from all of that is that it was just a part of the journey. I don't regret or hate any of the experiences that I've had, because I know now that this is all of this is part of the story, and it's all to give glory to God. It's not about me. At the end of the day, it's all about God. It's never about us. It's always about Him and His glory and the beautiful love that He has for us, because His love is unconditional. And as I've learned through my journey, is that we can't continue to search for love and value in others. Yes, we must love one another because we are all here on this earth at the same time. But I mean, like how I used to search for love in men, because I was trying to fill that void that I didn't have from my dad with things of this world, when only God can fill that void. He's the only one that can fill that void. And our value is determined by God, not by anyone else. And He is such an amazing Father that He loves us unconditionally. And because of that, and knowing that, and the word that He shares with us, that is why I am able to sit here and share this with you. And as I look back, and I have shared some of my story with others, and I've asked for forgiveness to those that I have hurt in the process, I I remember that none of this, like I mentioned, is for nothing. It's all for God's glory. And one of my favorite verses is Psalm 56:8, where it says, "You keep track of all of my sorrows. You have collected all of my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book." Just Psalm 56:8. One of my favorite verses because it reminds me that no matter how many times I've cried, no matter how many times people may tell me that I am overreacting or that nothing that I'm going through is important, I remember that He collects every single tear and He is always there waiting with open arms to be there with us. So I really hope that my testimony has touched you in a way where you are ready to share your testimony, or if you're not, just remember that your story is not in vain. It's all for His glory. And I hope that you are all blessed.
Amen. That was awesome. So one question I have for you. Who is Jesus to you?
Jesus to me, that's a really good question. Wow. Jesus to me is getting a little emotional. Jesus to me is life. He's the father that I've always thought I didn't have. I love my worldly father. I'm glad that at this point in my life, as I've gotten older, I've been able to build a relationship with him. But above all, Jesus is my father. He is the one that brings me calmness, brings me love, brings me authority, puts me in place when I know I'm doing the wrong thing and steering in the wrong direction. Overall, he's love. Because of him, I have known what love is through his word, through his love, but also through my daughter, through the people in my life, through my family, and even those who have hurt me. Through them, I have come to know Jesus, and that's what he is to me. He's everything.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Lemy, for sharing this amazing and very emotional testimony. I know it was difficult at times, but I'm glad you were able to share this and possibly encourage and inspire others who will watch this video and just show the power of Jesus Christ, that the life of someone can be changed even through addiction, like the way she was. So I just want to thank you guys for watching. If you could just hit a like and subscribe, share this video, and I hope you guys have a blessed day.